Okay, here is our tutorial on how to craft thematic text-dependent questions so that you can get a little review in and a little practice in before going to work on the Napoleon documents. Now, before we talk about thematic text-dependent questions, let's have a little review on text-dependent questions in general. So remember the three main rules about creating text-dependent questions. First, you have to read or view the text closely before you can create the text-dependent questions. You need to read them, annotate them, be analytical. Then, you also need to remember that the question has to require a close reading of the text to answer it. If the respondent, the person answering the question, can answer the question without using the text at all, then it's not a text-dependent question. And finally, you have to remember that a good text-dependent question requires the respondent not just to have read the text, but to have understood the text. So give them a chance to demonstrate their understanding of the text. Now, for thematic text-dependent questions more specifically, these are questions that require the reader to connect larger themes to the text. They're really very related to our big idea statements that we've used multiple times this year. And in fact, it's really helpful to create a big idea statement relating to the texts before crafting the questions. So here's a little guide about how to go about writing thematic text-dependent questions. Hopefully you find this helpful and it helps you understand the process a little bit more. So first off, you need to read or view the texts closely. You read the Napoleon biography for homework and hopefully annotated that as required. And then today you are viewing a video and you have two additional texts and an image. So you should analyze all of these texts and annotate them if appropriate. Take note of any concepts that you can connect to the texts. So you're really looking for the concepts that are related here. It might even be helpful to create a chart to track these concepts, something like this, so that you are tracking the concepts, you're tracking each text, and then the concepts that are found in each text. Once you have closely analyzed each text and perhaps used that chart, look for which concepts are discussed in all or in a majority of the texts. For example, on the last chart that we looked at, faith and conflict were found in the majority of the texts. You want to see the concepts that are connecting the texts together. Use those repeated concepts to create a big idea statement, like the ones we've used in our essays. So you want to look at how the concepts are connected, for example, cause and effect, or you might consider the concept's connection to larger pieces like humanity and the world. And then remember, a big idea is abstract, so it's something you can't touch. It's timeless, meaning it's appropriate to any time period, whether it's 2014 or 2014 BC. And it's also universal, so it applies to every human being in every part of the world, whether we are in Africa, Australia, Asia, America, and whether you're 9 months or 90 years old. Finally, once you've crafted your big idea statement, you need to transform it into a question that requires the respondent to connect the big idea back to the texts. So if you're given multiple texts, do try to have the respondent look at all of them or most of them and not just one. Okay, you want to require them to look at multiple texts and make the connections between the texts. Examples of thematic text-dependent questions, just to give you an idea of what some might look like, are how does the text support the idea that life experiences can foster change? So the big idea statement here was that life experiences can foster change. Transforming that into a question, they're asking the reader to look at how the text supports that big idea. Another example is how do these texts demonstrate that faith can lead to both positive and negative change? So now you're requiring the reader to look at more than one text. You might also think about asking them to compare or contrast how the texts deal with the concepts and deal with the themes that we're learning about. Now, go use those documents, look them over again if you need to, work with your group, talk to your group, and create your text-dependent questions.